Now it's live.
Hey everybody, welcome to a special emergency podcast broadcast. We're doing this under Android Central, but let's just call it Mobile Nations because that's who we have here. If you have for some reason been on an airplane all day and missed all the fun, this guy, Google announced Android Wear today, and it's been a little insane. So what we're going to do now is talk mostly the watches themselves. LG and Motorola have announced two watches, the LG G Watch and the Moto 360. So we have here Adam Zeiss from smartwatchfans.com.
Hi, super excited to be here.
You might also know that guy from Crackberry.
Maybe.
David Lundblad, he's Amazeballs, and he is our design director at Mobile Nations.
Hi.
Look up at the camera, David. We're up here.
Oh, hi.
I just know where his camera is.
And Kevin Michalik from Crackberry and the chief media officer of Mobile Nations.
I love watches, actually, more than I
that.
love phones, so I'm really excited, because really phones and tablets I've been faking for several years. I love watches, though, so it's like my dream has come together, technology and watches.
So let's talk about the watches in this one. We're going to save all the Android nerd stuff for the regular Android Central podcast on Friday. But we have two what look like very, very sexy watches, and David's very excited about them. And it's tough to get David excited about things sometimes. So I'm excited for David. I am excited because David is excited. That excites me. So let's talk about the watches themselves. Adam, you want to just kind of walk us through what it is we're looking at? Actually, we don't really know what they are, right? We just have pictures and names.
Yeah, I think everything just kind of popped up out of nowhere today. And we were just kind of hanging out, and Google announced Android Wear, which is their Android platform for wearables. And if that wasn't enough, they announced a bunch of OEMs as well, like Samsung and LG and Motorola. They're going to put out all these watches, and I think the biggest one that we've seen so far that everybody's super excited about, I'm over the moon excited about, is the Moto 360, which is this gorgeous watch which has this classic design to it. We haven't really seen a whole lot. I mean, there was this short little 2-minute video on the whole design process and their little teaser image, but overall it looks good. And then Google put out their kind of teaser video as well, which showed all these notifications, for Google Now and a little OK Google action and replying to the watch and everything. And it's just it's a lot to take in, and it's only been a couple hours, but it's really, really overwhelming at this point. But it's still, I think, super exciting, and it's this big game changer. And the last couple of podcasts that we had, with Kevin, Phil, and I, where we talked about, down the road, looking forward to Google and Apple and all these things to come. Like, this is kind of where we're at now. It's, everything's starting to happen, and it's going to be a heck of a lot different going forward from here with all this stuff, I think.
David, what's exciting you so much? I mean, because these kind of look like normal watches, right?
Yeah, I'm excited to see Motorola back, actually doing something awesome again. I think that's great.
They've been doing something awesome for 8 months now. Where have you been?
It's kind of true.
I don't think they've had anything really iconic for a long time, and I think this watch, I feel, is...
They've got phones with wooden backs!
I have a phone made out of wood.
It's bamboo.
You're hard to
like
please,
it.
man. I love them.
It's very hard to please. He's from Miami. What do you expect?
I do think that the moment I see the Moto 360, so this is a game changer, obviously. I just feel bad for all the other brands that have been trying to do smartwatches.
David, I think you just hit on what got me, maybe the word isn't excited, but wow, it's a real bombshell for them to drop. If you look at all these, if you go back to CES and all the smartwatches we covered, and you have companies like Omate and all that trying to pump up with their like custom OS to run a cheap smartwatch, and you have guys like Pebble who've been working hard for years on this now, building their own platform, their own app store even.
Kevin, you want some breaking news?
What?
We did actually just get a quote from Pebble.
Tell me what they said, because I've been feeling like bad for them for the last several hours.
All right, so this is from Eric. I'm going to get his name wrong.
Michkovsky.
Thank you. So Eric said, "We are excited about today's news from our friends at Google. When we started working on wearables 6 years ago, there were few players in the space and a lot of skeptics. It's exciting to see this market grow so quickly, enabling more interesting use cases and keeping all of us laser focused on creating the very best user experiences we can."
It's
I mean, what did you expect the guy to say, right?
It's very positive. I mean, Look, today is a game changer in a lot of ways because all of a sudden you're going to have a bunch of very, very good user experience smartwatches, and good user experience has been something that's kind of been lacking. With a lot more design from a lot more companies that have great manufacturing capabilities. It's going to get very hard for all these guys we've been talking about the last year of smartwatches, I think. I can't see how it gets easier for them.
Well, I totally agree, and let's also remember that as attractive as the watch itself is, this is just the small physical manifestation of this much larger service, right? And that's what makes me excited. I look at this thing and I go, holy shit, Google and Google Now can really slay on the service side, and I don't know anyone else that could come in and do anything similar. So what it then comes down to is just the hardware. Who's going to have the hottest hardware piece?
Things like I wrote we did an editorial a while back on whether they should sell smartwatches in watch stores and jewelry stores, and already off the bat, Fossil put out a press release today. Fossil's one of these. I've loved Fossil for years. It's not the biggest and best, but they've always made these really stylish watches that I've absolutely loved. And I have one that it was this old kind of vintage big wideband one that I wore for years. And they already announced that they're going to support Android Wear. We don't know what incarnation, or what kind of devices they're going to have it on or anything like that. But just to have it day one, for somebody as big as Fossil to say, hey, we're going to support this platform going forward. It's the beginning of this integration for the the classic mechanical watch side and the smartwatch side. Like everything, from today, March 18th, is kind of starting this progression to move together. So I think it's it's a big day, and it's going to be a huge shift going forward.
I think, Adam, that's probably what got me the most excited today. As much as I love the look at the Moto 360 there, but what got me really excited was just in their press announcement or their blog post where they said, and fashion brands, and luxury brands. Because this is finally where we might see a merger of, the traditional high-end stuff, the fancy stuff that I personally prefer over, tech when it comes to things I wear, and technology in a way that's not cheesy, right? We've seen like Prada phones and all these things over the years, and they've never come across in a good way. It's always been like, okay, this is just a fashion label being thrown on a tech product, and it's remained that. But now when you come into something like a wristwatch, which is, for guys, it's probably one of the only pieces of jewelry we wear, the nicer things we can strap on. Fossil's a great start, and hopefully we'll see more. And honestly, if you think about the biggest watch companies out there, like companies like, say, Swatch, which are, billion-dollar companies, and they own a lot of the big brands that, range from lower end to higher end. If they were to build a smartwatch now, what do you think they're going to do? Do you think they're going to try to out-Google Google now? It's like today's announcement just they almost seal it up with the exception of Apple and an iWatch.
Yeah, but even on that side, well, it's funny with the mention of Apple now because all of the stuff that they put out today might as well have been Apple. You look at the stuff that they're presenting, and it is really, really slick, really well put together. Even the videos are clearly inspired by Apple's latest iPad promotional videos, where it's all about taking the person, actually making the person be more in the now and less disrupted by technology, but always connected. And I think that's what Apple wanted to do with the new iPad commercials, and that is certainly what Google is doing with this.
Yeah.
I think people at Apple, there is definitely people there going, oh shit.
It's pretty huge that they got now. I mean, Phil, were you expecting this to drop this early this year, or were you thinking it was still more in the distance?
Yes, because they said it was coming 2 weeks ago.
Okay. No, did they really?
Everything.
Yeah, no, Sundar at where was it? At South by Southwest last week, I guess, a week and a half ago, whenever it was, said yes, we're going to do some sort of wearables SDK. We're going to talk about it, very soon. So hang on. In fact, I think he said within a couple of weeks. So yeah, like we kind of knew that was coming. I don't think it's easy for me to say. I don't think we expected actual watches yet, but I mean, there's kind of no reason why, because we knew LG was working on one. We've known, Google is working on one along with them. Motorola is a little bit of a surprise, maybe, especially with all the other just politics that's been going on, with Motorola being sold off to Lenovo after after everything it took to get them under Google's wing, and then sold off, after less than a year of new devices, to have this really cool-looking new watch. I think it's also worth mentioning that in the press release, Google did say, look, Samsung's a partner in this, and maybe we'll talk more about that Friday, maybe today, we'll see. But Samsung, HTC, Asus, this is just the beginning right now, guys.
Well, I think so. It's a good question. Not even from the the hardcore Android perspective. Obviously, Samsung just announced the Gear 2.
Yep.
It's using Tizen and not Android.
Yep.
So is this potentially explain part of the reason why they went Tizen? Because maybe they knew this was coming for the next generation, and this was an easier way for them to.
Maybe, but at the same time, they're also a partner in all this somehow. We don't know how yet.
It's kind of weird, right? It seems weird to me as a bit of just watching. I'm like, okay, that's.
Yeah, definitely, and I've used the Gear 2 briefly at Mobile World Congress a few weeks ago, and it's very much the same look and feel of what the original Gear was, running a full-blown version of Android.
But would you buy a Gear 2 now if you could? I don't think me as a consumer would buy a Gear 2 when I now see what the Moto 360 or something looks like.
My problem with the Gear, with that whole Gear line, is a problem I've had since last August. Remember we were all in Miami and I had it down there with us. And the biggest problem I had with it has not changed, and Tizen doesn't change it. And it's that those watches only work with Samsung products, which is great for Samsung. Great for Samsung. Bad for me. This new stuff presumably will work with any Android device. I don't know why it wouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's my thing too. I was kind of super excited for the Gears. I kind of like the original Gear. I like the functionality of it and everything. But I have, all I have is a Note 3 to use it with, and that's not, my main Android phone is an Nexus 5, which you can kind of hack it together to make it work. But so I think we were hoping that the next generation, the Gear 2 devices, were going to be able to work with any Android device across the board. But that's not the case. So they're, again, they kind of sell themselves short where it's, hey, here's our great new watches, but they only work with, our 17 devices or whatever it is. So, but now, I don't really have any notion in my mind that I want a Gear 2 or a Gear 2 Neo. My mind is, Moto 360 right now or LG G Watch. I'm like, I can have these watches with all of my googly goodness on it, with Google Now and all my notifications and everything, and it's going to work with any phone. It's obviously going to work with my Nexus 5 or whatever you have. So it's, it's a total game changer, I think. So it's going to be tough for Samsung and Tizen to do their thing at this point. So.
I agree. I mean, Google Now. Anyone who's ever used Google Now and don't think that it's the most amazing thing, I don't understand. It's like living. Every time I use it, I'm like, I'm basically living in the future, and this is amazing. And to have that on my wrist now, even just having used the Pebble for a few months, I found that extremely useful when I'm out, because it reduces. I feel that I keep connected, and that's not just an addiction, which it is too, but it's also an expectation from friends, from family, and from work, that you are available. So with that, just with a Pebble, I found it extremely useful, as it doesn't disrupt as much as a phone would. But it's so incredibly limited compared to Google Now, right?
I mean,
sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing that impresses me right now is, in the last couple of hours, I've now heard from about 5 people, and I haven't talked to that many people in the last few hours. They were all people who said they're not watch wearers, right? Like David, kind of one of them. I know the Pebbles trained you a little bit. Mobile Nation's founder, CEO Marcus Adelson, same thing. I've been trying to get him to wear a watch for years. No. We managed to get him to wear a Pebble for CES, which he then took off because he didn't really love it. But this is a watch, like the Moto 360. He's genuinely, I'm going to buy that. And I think with what we're seeing here in design and the brief glimpses of functionality, people who haven't been wearing watches the last several years because they have a smartphone that tells the time and everything else, I think they'll actually maybe start wearing watches when they start to look like this. And it's an interesting question in the Q&A that came in, which said, are watches all going round, and will the square style watch be for the ones who want to look techie now? And I think it's a good question, right? Because normally when you see mechanical watches, more of them are round than not when you think about hands going in a circle. But most of the smartwatches we've seen to date have been square due to the square screens being cheaper and easier to get. And I wonder if that's going to become a little bit of a design thing here in the smartwatch space.
I think it's huge. I mean,
that was a question. Hang on one second, because I want to get to this Q&A question. It was a really good question, and kind of the big reason we have David here. Tom Paris asked, Moto has it right with the round design. When do you think that we'll see more like that specifically from Fossil? I mean, David, from a design standpoint, going back from something that looks like this, which I still think is pretty good, especially comparing the original Pebble, which is something my wife never would have worn. Now we're getting, we're going to get back to even more traditional watch designs, and we've seen other manufacturers do it, but this new stuff looks sexy.
Well, yeah, it does, and I don't think it comes down so much to the shape. It comes down to the quality of the screen, because if you can project something that is very close to what a luxury watch face looks like now, when you look at it, because it's more about how, obviously not from every angle, but when you look at it and it has that feel, that tactile, substantial clockwork feel, then you'll bring over all the people who love the luxury watches. And Kevin, you know this very well. Like in the luxury watch industry, there's no such thing that a square is obviously of a lesser quality than a round one, right?
No, and there's never a best watch either in the luxury watch industry, right? There's watches for particular occasions, right? Sometimes you want a leather strap, sometimes you want stainless steel, you want a white face, a dark face as it's summer versus a formal event, you want a thin watch or a thick watch. It goes all over, and I mean, honestly, I have a feeling I'm going to have to increase my watch budget because there's going to be a bunch of these that I'm going to want.
That's my thing. I mean, you look at like all these watches that I have, and the one that I love, which I hate at the same time, is this Cuckoo, which is, it's this great looking mechanical watch and it has this round face on it, but the functionality of it, as far as a smartwatch goes, is pretty crappy, But every other smartwatch, including my Pebble and my Pebble Steel, they're all these square or rectangular watches. So I think it just automatically right off the bat, the fact that if you have this round watch that's, a smartwatch, it kind of changes things up too. But it's like Kevin said, you have, I mean, I was never a big watch wearer before, and now it's kind of like, do I want to wear my Pebble or my Pebble Steel when I go out? But you're going to get to this point where you have, like Kevin has a watch box or jewelry box or whatever, where you're picking through, and all your watches are smartwatches, and they're all high-end, and they all look good, and you're kind of matching them to your outfit, and it becomes this more, bigger fashion statement. But I think, I'm just ecstatic about the Moto 360, and if that's only the beginning of what we're going to see, then it's it's going to be very interesting for sure.
I think it's the other thing about Android being the platform here is that I could feasibly buy a bunch of watches now from different manufacturers, and I will be able to use them all very seamlessly. So I can draft, we're not talking about the average user now who's probably going to buy one smartwatch, but if I look at what I spend on a watch like that, I could probably buy a bunch of these smartwatches as they hit the market, and I probably will because I love watches more than I love phones or tablets. But the fact that I could probably run them all on Android, all be similar, all swap between phones and not have to relearn everything, that's a lot easier for me versus say what you're doing there, Adam, which is like different platform, different apps, everything's a bit of a mess. You need to really commit to one. So as long as you're willing to go with Google, which we'll see what Apple does in that, but Google's going to have a great service offering on this thing. It kind of creates the watch addiction thing again, which is kind of fun in this tech world.
That's what I was going to say. I think you might be wrong in saying that most people only get one. I can see people like the average Joe actually getting more than one of these because it becomes
price, right? We'll see what price comes in at, and that's I think Phil, it's one of the Q&As here is what's the price? Has anything been said or not?
Not yet.
No, and I think it's a big point we need to make is we're getting way ahead of ourselves here because right now all we have is pictures and words and a name and some promises.
Yeah,
and
that's good. That's good enough. I want it. but it's important what you're saying because if you look at all the pictures that have come out, the screen looks incredible, which I feel doubtful of. Right.
What if these things only have 1 day's worth of battery? What's the deal breaker?
It depends. I mean, for me, honestly, like the last couple of days since the new Pebble update, I'm dying because my Pebble used to go like 4 or 5 days on a charge, and now every day or every other day I have to charge it again. But it's different for different people. I mean, if you're more of a watch fan where you want to say, I wear this watch and I want to plug it in, once a week and have it go. But I think for us, we're tech guys, we're phone guys. Like I'm plugging, at least 2 out of 3 of my phones in every night anyway. So what's to say I don't have another spot to plug my watch in. Like if it's that good and the fact that I want to wear it every day, as long as the battery gets through a day, I think that's the bare minimum. I mean, you can't have a watch be like a crappy phone with a crappy battery where you have to charge it in the middle of the day, or you have to have a spare battery pack to charge your watch. I think that's way too extreme. It has to get at least through a standard day for the average user, otherwise it's no good. But if you're charging at midday, you're out of luck.
What about how these compare to the not traditional watches, but the fitness bands we've seen? Because probably the hottest thing out of Mobile World Congress was the Gear Fit, the little fitness band. LG has one, and then you've got all the traditional fitness bands. Do we not care about them anymore? Do we just want to watch?
I think they're just this is the end of them. Waiting on an watch, I really think it's the end of those.
If you're packing all your fitness features into the your regular watch that you're wearing, you don't need it, because right now I think a lot of people have like a Pebble and a fitness tracker on, but if you're putting all these fitness and health tracking features into a watch that you're wearing on a daily basis, then there's no need for them.
No, and obviously with all the extra features that comes with something like this.
Yeah, I don't disagree. You might end up owning two. One that is the one you get sweaty, if you're going jogging and stuff, and then one that's your casual one.
Sure.
But, I mean, I've been in the same boat, right? Because I like wearing a mechanical watch. I like my fitness trackers, especially when I'm traveling and that I want to count my steps. But I honestly think a watch like this would make me take off the fitness band, and just go with this. And it maintains the aesthetic look that I want. It's not trying to be too techy, which, I still view what you put on your wrist as jewelry to some extent. So it's a pretty good compromise they're going after. I'm really impressed.
Well, yeah, and the Google Now was so important because, I see a different campaign of this coming out with waterproof, drop-proof watches, and you have, people climbing, people being out on the water, people being on the beach, whatever it might be, where you're actually having the full functionality of your phone, but your phone is stored away safe in your backpack, and the watch is waterproof on your wrist, right? And you don't need the touch screen necessarily, or you don't need access to the buttons because you got Google Now.
Ben asks if it'll be powered by Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, or if the connectivity will be Wi-Fi or Bluetooth, and which is more ideal. We don't know. That's one of those things they haven't announced. If it's like Google Glass, it'll have both, right? So Google Glass will connect to Wi-Fi on its own. When you're outside of Wi-Fi, it will connect to your phone via Bluetooth and get its data that way. I have a feeling these watches will only be Bluetooth, if only for the low power connectivity of that, but we just don't know yet. Does that matter to you guys at all, or is that just nerdy?
I don't know if Wi-Fi is necessary on something like a watch. I think the the Bluetooth's the way to go, because in this case, I think most of the if not everything's going to be on your phone anyway, where it's getting all the the data and the Google Now info and all that stuff's going to be on your phone, and it's just kind of a notification device. So I don't know that the Wi-Fi would be important at all.
I agree. Somebody else asked if Pebble will make an Android Gear device. We don't know. I think if they did, there are probably going to be some pretty serious design, not recommendations, but design things that you have to follow, some guidelines that you have to follow, and I doubt that an e-paper monochrome display will be a part of that, right?
It would be them starting from scratch. I mean, if you look at it, they've put most of their time and energy and what they're developing. Their innovation has been on the software front, and they've kind of fudged their way through the mechanical side of it as best they can, as cost effectively as they can. All the credit to them, because it's big sort of business, and look how they started on Kickstarter, even with the Pebble. If they go this, they could, but they're basically starting from scratch now. They're throwing their software out the door completely, and they're not coming at it from a hardware design background and years of manufacturing products and that. So it'd be tricky. I think they could do it, but it would be very fresh start.
I think that's the other thing too. I mean, like we were saying before, we have no idea what price point these are going to come in at. But say your Moto 360 comes in at $150. For argument's sake, and you're at Best Buy and you have your Pebble and your Moto 360 side by side, it's kind of a no-brainer which one you're going to buy, because you have this great-looking watch with a color screen and all these features and everything, and then you have this, this monochrome e-paper watch that looks plasticky right next to it, so it's kind of blows it out, and then you get into the argument, where Arcos has these other watches coming out over the summer where they're going to have this like $50 Pebble competitor, so that's kind of the price point that these monochrome devices are going to have to be at that point if you're going to have this all these Android Wear devices that are going to be hopefully relatively inexpensive by smartwatch standards, but nobody's going to be paying $150 or look at the Pebble Steel. I don't think a lot of people are going to be shelling out that much money for a Pebble Steel at that point when they can get these Android Wear devices that have the same features plus more plus color plus all this other stuff. It's going to be very difficult.
I'm still real curious about these displays because you go back to, especially when you go and you look at what Qualcomm's done with Mirasol, and every press render you see of a Qualcomm Mirasol watch of the
Phil's angry over the quality of that.
the pictures look beautiful, the watch looks like crap. It's not a one-to-one comparison what it actually looks like in person, and obviously these are renders we've seen today. So I am positive, but I'm skeptical at the same time.
I think what's really smart about today too is a lot of people have been talking about, will smartwatches succeed or not succeed, et cetera, et cetera. And with the way Google announced this as a platform, and the SDK, they bring on these manufacturers, it's almost like they deflect the risk off themselves a lot. It's like, well, we're enabling this industry to take off now. We're giving you the stuff you need. We're saying it's going to grow much bigger than smartwatches, but we're starting at smartwatches. And now there's manufacturers' names in the mix too, right? From big manufacturers' names in the mix from day one. I think that was a really smart move on their part, maybe side benefit. The other thing that I think really works in their favor here is talk about a giftable item, right? I can see so many teenagers putting this on their Christmas and birthday lists. I can see so many people buying it like that, and it's at a price point where it's not out of that range, where phones come with contracts and tablets are still a little bit pricey when you bump up the memory on them. But something like this, especially if they really are in that 150 to 200 range, I think you're going to see smartwatch sales expectations spring up high after today, more so than we've seen them be projected in the past.
Absolutely.
We'll probably see a lot of low-end stuff too. I mean, Phil can speak for it, but look at the all the low-end Android tablets that people buy for sub $100, and when if the smartwatches are going to be the same way, if these companies, not necessarily knockoffs, but they're going to make these low-end Android Wear devices that you can buy for $50, $75, where people are just snatching them up to try it, and they'll be kind of like a gateway to these bigger, better devices. So
maybe that'll probably take a little time before you get the economy of scale that goes into that, and plus these are smaller devices, and smaller devices just on principle are more expensive to produce. So we'll see there. I wouldn't expect a $50 or $100 smartwatch anytime soon. 2-3 years down the road, maybe, yeah.
But it's smart because Google can hand over the hardcore manufacturing to a brand to whom it really, really matters. To a brand that's going to go all the way in terms of reducing weight, in terms of the screen quality, the battery life, and they just have to provide the software, right?
Here's a good question. Where did it go? I just lost it. Billy asked, do you see these two watches equipped with NFC for tap to pay?
Yeah.
Yeah? You think so, David?
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, you figure you integrate Google Wallet into your Moto 360, and you're kind of off to the races there because you're running around with, everything's there on your wrist, and you go and run into the store and you swipe your wrist in front of the little pad. You're good to go. There's already apps for the Pebble where it shows your QR code and they can scan it, like Starbucks and stuff like that. So what's to say they don't throw an inexpensive NFC chip in there? And
right, but you're still going to want to authenticate back to a password somehow, right? I guess you could enter it on the watch's screen or back to your phone, but you don't want to. Basically, you can't put a scenario out there where if the phone gets the watch, you leave your watch behind, somebody starts paying with it. So
what are you talking about? Voice recognition, thumbprint scanner on the watch.
Yeah, I love it.
I mean, you look at things like if it's connected to your phone, I guess you could always have the argument that you lose both your phone and your watch, but it's
all doable.
No, but our phones right now, there's no doubt, is they're a hard drive with an interface on it, right? So right now, that piece of technology has been a necessity. But there's no, how we interface with that hard drive and wherever that hard drive exists is kind of irrelevant when you have technology like this. So as we move forward, stuff like the Google Watch and Android Wear and whatever Apple comes up with is going to be our interface to pretty much everything we do on our phone today.
Good point from Jerry Hildenbrand from Android Central says probably no tap to pay because Bluetooth connections are easily hackable, and that's very true. I just want to be able to like hold my wrist out under the little barcode scanner for boarding a flight and just shove
That'd
it
be
in
awesome,
there.
actually.
That's what I want.
Yeah, for sure.
A good point from Josh Madonna in the Q&A says it talks about mesh network integration for Google at Home connectivity because in one of the videos they did show them saying, "Okay, Google, open the garage door," set it on its phone, and garage door opens. So that's this Nest purchase I think is going to come back really, really nicely here in the next couple of years. I mean, that's what I want.
Absolutely.
I want to be able to open my garage door without having this janky thing in my car.
I'm going to have it on everything in here. I'm going to have it like, okay, start the oven, open the bedroom door, play Sonos, whatever in the living room.
I think another...
Sorry, if you think, just that, looking at that display, and then you think of your Nest display, like having some kind of connectivity where you're just, you're viewing whatever, it's a Nest app or whatever, but you're viewing, your Nest stats and everything right on your watch, seeing your temperature in your house and stuff, and changing it from your watch when you're on your way home. Like, there's so many possibilities to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I do think as we move towards these types of interfaces, it's less about the experience of engaging with a lot of content, and it's more about you giving directions or giving orders and making your life easier, right? So the interface is so small that you don't want to clutter it with too many things. There's like some very basic things that Google now already does so well, in that it already filters and picks out just the necessary stuff, right? When you use it, it's a huge improvement to other services. I honestly think it would be interesting if Renee was on this too, because I don't know. I would want to have a conversation about what would Apple do now, or what should they do now, right?
Yeah.
I think it's worth mentioning with the Motorola watch, steel band, steel links, and leather strap.
It's true, and no micro USB or charging
don't
ports.
care.
So is it going to have wireless charging then? Because I didn't see any ports. I was looking at the photos.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Ports
as
on a
long
watch.
as it's not like the talk where I have to actually put it on the big ass bulky charger just to turn it on.
Ports. That is a good question. There is let me see if I can find it. There's a 360-degree thing of the Motorola.
That's one of my biggest gripes is, the more and more watches that I amass, just the amount of different chargers and connectors and everything I have for them, and it's just, I think the talk is my biggest gripe because you have this gigantic charger that you have to carry around, which is micro USB in itself, but if I want to turn it on, then I have to pop this thing up, plug it in, put the watch on it to get it just to turn on, so it's a giant pain in the butt. So micro USB is where it's at. Please.
Right here in Miami, we just need some solar receptors on it.
There you go. All of them. Kinetic, solar, wireless, Wi-Fi harvesting.
You could.
Absolutely.
And like the mechanical watches and just stand there and shake your wrist all day to keep it charged up and be good to go.
Okay, so David, you mentioned Apple a few seconds ago, and I'm sure we will. I've done a couple smartwatch vector podcasts with Renee, and I'm sure he'll do another vector podcast exploring this topic. One thing that today made me think about with Apple and the upcoming iWatch, which I've actually been looking forward to a lot, is choice. So today we've already seen a couple of designs for Android Wear, and we know there's more companies involved, so there's going to be a bunch more. We probably can say when Apple gets up on stage and announces whatever iWatch they do, it'll probably be one of them.
Yeah.
Which means if they sell 50 million of them or 10 million, whatever the number is, the odds are good you're going to see a whole crap load of people walking around with the same watch as you if you own one. You're like you're a part of this. If aliens were looking down from space, they would just assume you're a species of people who wear that thing on your wrist. And I think what I like with today is it gives me hope that I can have a watch that I won't see 100 times a day as I walk around, that I can still take pride in, enjoyment in, have my unique personality identified in, more than whatever Apple wants me to have as my identity with what they make. And I think the Moto 360 is a good look at that, and so is LG's, right? They're very different looking watches. Which one you pick, assuming the specs in that shake out close enough, it comes down to your choice of what better represents your personality. And that's something Apple doesn't really do. You can do it with accessories a little bit, but not the actual hardware. But there's not a lot to accessorize. I mean, straps and that. But I think that makes me excited that we'll see a whole bunch of selection here of really good watches.
Well, it makes you think of those old Swatches where you could pop out the face and change up the band, and they had, I don't know what you call it, the bump guard or whatever. I remember, when I was a kid in school, and you could buy different colors of the guard to put over it, and you could get all kind of funky with it. But, I understand what you're saying, and it's not the same thing, but it's, I agree, there's not really too much you can do as far as accessorizing, so I think it's kind of what they make is where you're at.
Swatch watch. I want a Swatch watch.
Watch is where it's at.
Well, Kevin, to your point, I want to reply to that actually. I think, when watching this presentation now, actually, this is kind of what I had expected to see. When I was dreaming about what the iWatch could be. This is kind of what I would have expected to see, right? And now I think had Google not invested. Had Google not started investing properly in UI and design a while back, this would have been a different matter. But now, since they have, Android interfaces are not bad. And then they aren't as high quality and as good as Apple does them yet, but they're getting very close. And as a person who's used both phones, there's very little difference these days in terms of quality. So that's why when I look at this and I go, yeah. Oh, and I can go to a number of different luxury watchmakers, and I can have my Android smartwatch. That's a lot more compelling.
That's the thing, right? So now I have hope that I can get a really, really high-end materials watch, right? So I'm talking like a really well-built, metal band, etc. Some of the things that get fancier and drive the cost of watches up, with a quality. With Android on it, and it'd be a real watch. I mean, Fossil's Fossil, it's good. It's not Kevin's watch. But the thing is, Apple will never do that, right? Apple's going to make their watch, and that's it. So I'm really excited that all these brands that I have an affinity for, there's actually a hope that they might make an Android Wear product.
Would you buy like a $2,000 Google Now watch?
Once the specs shake out, so I would assume that the first year or two you're going to see a rapid development cycle and a lot of learning. How do we make the battery life better? How do we make it faster, etc. But after say 2 years, once they're all really good, then I would invest in it. I think in the beginning you would do it only as a, it's like buying Google Glass in the beginning, right? You just want to be an early adopter of something, and if it's expensive, you would chalk it down as I'm at the front of the curve. But a few years down the road, I would, once I know that watch will be there for a few years on my wrist. It's kind of a cost average down thing. If I think, look, I got to spend $5,000 or $3,000 on a super high-end luxury watch, but it runs Android, if I divide that per day and it's 5 days, I'm like, okay, if I get down to $1 a day or $2 a day, it's not insane. It's still expensive if you look at what you have to put out front, but it's not insane. If it only lasted for 3 months and it's obsolete by the next watch that comes out, then I would never do it, right, as a regular person.
Well.
What else? What else excites you?
I'm just excited in general, I think, because for a few months now we've been back and forth with all these different watches and different platforms, and there's, I don't know how many watches I own now, 8 or 10 or something, and pretty much every single one has a different platform on it, and none of them have 100% of what I'm looking for in a watch. Some have crappy battery life, some have a crappy OS, some don't give me all the notifications I want. So it's just, if any the videos have any form of truth to them whatsoever for the Moto 360, and any other watches we're going to see, I think it's going to be huge because it's, it's going to give you, I don't want to say that, this is the future's here, but you have these watches with, a service that I use on a daily basis. Like I use Google Now for a lot of things, especially when you're traveling and stuff. Phil, you travel all the time, so you know how important it is to have, your flight info, and they showed stuff with like the taxi cab confirmation and your boarding pass and stuff like that, so you're just running around with everything that you'd normally have, shoved in your phone on your pocket, and it's all right on your wrist, ready to go. You're talking to send your wife a text message to let her know you landed in Newark and you're not dead, and all kinds of stuff like that. It's just, I think it's just overall very exciting, and the more, the further we go, we're going to see more and more from these big companies, which is, huge. And everybody, all these other Kickstarter, Indiegogo watches that kind of waited too long to this point, which we've talked about in the past, they're kind of, I don't want to say they're shit out of luck at this point, but it's pretty much where they're at, because
Dude,
people
they're shit out of luck. Like
they're canceling their orders right now.
Is anybody going to launch a new Kickstarter for a smartwatch after today?
It's
I think I got one email already, actually.
For today? Okay, then they're crazy. Because after today, that's just that, I don't know.
Today is the very last day, because if you do it like after today, after this all sinks in, then you're screwed. But people that are, if you're going to launch a Kickstarter, do it right now. Otherwise, you're.
I think people were crazy before this announcement too, because like you had to be working on the assumption that neither Google or Apple was working on an iWatch, right? And assume that you were just going to be fine. They weren't going to care about it. They weren't going to want to have their own version of it, and you were going to be able to leech off their user base. That's just not going to be the case, and they would never have let that happen. I thought it was, it's been fun. Bye. Like, really.
I'm excited. Barring crappy battery life and a crappy display, which would, I think, kill me on any product, but I'm excited for the idea. At some point, I mean, there will be a good one at one point or the other, but, I mean, it's going to be battery life. I mean, that I can bring the Pebble here to New York for a day and a half and not have to worry about charging it, not have to worry that it's going to die. That's a big deal.
Can I say
anything else you guys want to start wrapping it up? I think. I mean, we're going to have loads more to talk about this on all our sites, I think, right?
Well, what I wanted to say is I'm super excited with whoever came up with the name Android Wear, because, we happen to have the world's greatest Android community and site on the internet, Android Central. So spread the word that Android Central will own all things Android Wear. The forum's already up and rocking. Like, it's good to see. It's great to see that they went that route, and it's going to mean great things for that community for years to come. So Phil, unfortunately, just tell your wife now you'll never take a vacation again.
Man, I was so close to. I'm in New York right now, so I'm in a hotel, and I was set to just sit on the airplane and have a glass of wine and come up here and do my thing and go home, and now it's like, all right, I'm in the hotel for like 30 seconds and we're podcasting.
Podcast time.
It's going to be insane. It's going to be really good. I'm excited. We've got Adam from Smartwatch Fans, by the way, and Adam's even more in depth into this than I am.
Yeah, it's it's like we've said in the past, things are kind of just picking up for us. We're moving along as more and more stuff comes about. So this is pretty much obviously one of the biggest things that we've had happen so far. So as the months and weeks go by, I don't know, when's Google I/O's in June or something like that, I think. So
yes.
I think right around there, leading up to there, we're going to hear more and more, and then towards the end of the year, it's just going to be pretty crazy. I think part of me wants to be like Phil, where I just have all these devices coming out of nowhere that we have to look at and review and talk about. But at the same time, I'm like, maybe just a couple at a time would be a lot easier to manage for now. But
look at my eyes, look at those bags.
You don't want that. I think that's the other thing too. Hopefully we don't get to the point where I have trouble picking out which device I'm going to use. I'm sure, Phil, you have all these phones. And it's like, hey, I want to use this week or this week. I don't want to end up at that point with the watches. I hope that there's kind of one or two that are the overall rulers at some point down the road that we can stick with. But I'm super excited for sure.
David Lundblad, designer extraordinaire.
Thanks. Is that an opening? You need to say something? I actually have to leave.
Okay,
you can't just bail on us.
David's sending me Skype messages at the same time that he has to leave. You can just talk to me. I'm right here. It's okay.
People don't mind, David. It's okay.
All right, so David's behind the scenes mostly, but an awesome guy to have around. And then we got Kevin from Crackberry and everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I love watches. Even a little bit more today. It's kind of exciting.
Just a little.
So go to Smartwatch Fans. Go to AndroidCentral.com. We've got everything. It's ridiculous. Everything. All right, that's it.
Viking got the Moto 360. I want it.
Bye. Thanks. Smartwatches forever.